Have you ever noticed that the very moment you stop looking for freedom, it reveals itself to have been here all along? This is perhaps one of life's most beautiful paradoxes, that what we seek with such intensity in the future is quietly waiting in the simplicity of this present moment. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice the aliveness that permeates your being. Feel the subtle sensation of breath moving through your body. Observe the gentle awareness that allows you to be conscious of these words, of the sounds around you, of the space in which all experience arises. This awareness, this pure, unconditioned consciousness, is your true nature. It is not something you possess. It is what you are. The mind may immediately want to understand this concept, to grasp it intellectually, to file it away for future reference. But freedom cannot be understood in the way the mind understands things. Freedom can only be recognized, felt, lived. It exists in the dimension beyond thought, in the space between the words you are hearing right now. Take one conscious breath, and in that breath, notice that you are not separate from life. You are life expressing itself in this unique form, in this unrepeatable moment. The breath breathes you. Life lives you. Consciousness experiences itself through you. You are not an observer of existence. You are existence becoming aware of itself. The ego mind has convinced you that freedom is something to be achieved, earned, or attained through effort and time. It whispers that you must become someone different, accumulate more experiences, reach some future state of enlightenment. But this very seeking creates the illusion of separation from what you already are. You are like a wave searching for the ocean, while being made of nothing but ocean. When you rest in the simple awareness of being here now, without trying to improve this moment or escape from it, something profound occurs. The mental noise that usually dominates your experience begins to recede into the background. It doesn't disappear entirely. Thoughts may still arise, but they lose their compulsive quality. They become like clouds drifting across the vast sky of your awareness, no longer mistaken for the sky itself. Notice the space around the thoughts. Notice the silence between sounds. This space, this silence, is not empty. It is pregnant with potential, alive with presence. It is the source from which all experience arises and to which all experience returns. This is your true home, and you have never left it. The freedom you seek is not freedom from life, but freedom within life. It is not the absence of thoughts, emotions, or sensations, but freedom from the unconscious identification with them. When you know yourself as the awareness in which all experience unfolds, even difficult experiences lose their power to disturb your essential peace. Perhaps you have spent years, even decades, waiting for your life to truly begin, waiting for the right circumstances, the perfect relationship, the ideal job, the moment when you finally feel ready to be fully alive. This waiting has become such a familiar companion that you may not even notice it anymore. The subtle underlying sense that life is always happening somewhere else to someone else at some other time. The mind is masterful at creating this illusion of temporal displacement. It projects happiness into the future and meaning into the past, leaving you perpetually displaced from the only time in which life actually occurs, this moment. It says, when I achieve this goal, then I will be happy. When this problem is resolved, then I will be at peace. When I understand myself better, then I will be free. But life is not a rehearsal. It is not a preparation for something greater to come. This moment, exactly as it is, with all its apparent imperfections and ordinariness, is the stage upon which the entire drama of existence is unfolding. To miss this moment in favor of some imagined future moment is to miss life itself. Notice how the mind creates resistance to what is present. It judges this moment as insufficient, boring, problematic. It compares your current experience to some idealized version of how things should be. This comparison creates a subtle but persistent friction, an inner no to life as it is. This resistance is the root of all psychological suffering. The extraordinary secret is that when you stop resisting this moment, when you say a complete yes to what is present, not in a passive way, but with full conscious participation, the moment transforms. Not because it becomes different, but because your relationship to it becomes transparent. The mental commentary that usually separates you from direct experience falls away, and you find yourself in immediate, intimate contact with the isness of life. Even physical pain, when met with complete acceptance rather than resistance, often transforms in ways that defy the mind's understanding. The pain may remain, but the suffering, which is the mind's story about the pain, dissolves. You discover that you are vast enough to contain any experience without being diminished by it. This is not about becoming passive or resigned to circumstances that can be changed. True acceptance actually creates the space for right action to emerge. When you are not wasting energy fighting against what is, that energy becomes available for creative response. Solutions appear that the mind could never have conceived from its place of resistance and struggle. Take another conscious breath, and in this breath, practice saying yes to this moment exactly as it is. Not the mental yes of agreement or approval, but the deeper yes of non-resistance, of allowing life to be life without your editorial commentary. You are washing dishes after dinner. The warm water flows over your hands, soap bubbles catch the light. The familiar weight of plates and cups moves through your fingers. For most people, this is simply a task to be completed as quickly as possible, a barrier between them and whatever they imagine they would rather be doing. But what if this simple act held the key to the deepest spiritual realization? When you bring complete attention to the washing of dishes, something miraculous happens. The boundary between the washer and the washing dissolves. There is no longer a separate you performing an action on separate dishes. There is only the seamless flow of consciousness expressing itself as washing, as wetness, as warmth, as the subtle satisfaction of transforming disorder into order. This is not about developing appreciation for housework. This is about recognizing that any activity, no matter how mundane it appears, becomes a doorway into the sacred when approached with total presence. The sacred is not found in special places or extraordinary circumstances. The sacred is the quality of consciousness you bring to whatever is happening. Watch a cat stretch in the morning sunlight. Notice how completely present it is to the simple act of stretching. There is no part of the cat thinking about yesterday's stretch or planning tomorrow's nap. The cat is the stretch, is the sunlight, is the pure aliveness of the moment. This is the natural state of all life, when not filtered through the prism of thought. You walk from your car to the grocery store. The mind may be planning your shopping list, rehearsing a conversation, or lost in some completely unrelated stream of thoughts. But beneath this mental activity, your feet are meeting the ground with each step. Your body is moving through space. The air is touching your skin. Sounds are arising and dissolving in awareness. All of this is happening in the eternal now, but it goes unnoticed when attention is captured by mental time. What would it be like to walk as if each step were a prayer? Not a prayer asking for something, but a prayer of gratitude for the simple miracle of walking, of being alive, of participating in the grand celebration of existence. Each footfall becomes a gentle reminder that you are not separate from the earth beneath your feet. You are the earth temporarily arranged in the form that calls itself by your name. Eating becomes communion when you taste your food with complete attention. The sweetness of an apple, the complexity of flavors in a simple soup, the texture of bread, all of these become revelations when encountered with presence rather than consumed unconsciously while attention is elsewhere. The apple does not just nourish your body, it becomes a direct transmission of the earth's generosity, the sun's warmth, the rain's blessing. Even breathing, the most automatic and overlooked of activities, transforms when touched by conscious attention. The breath that is happening now has never existed before and will never exist again. This unique breath arising in this unique moment, carrying life into your body and carrying you deeper into the present moment with each inhalation and exhalation. Feel the breath breathing itself. Notice how you don't have to manage or control the breathing. It happens by itself, through an intelligence that is far wiser than any mental planning or effort. This same intelligence beats your heart, grows your hair, heals your wounds, digests your food. You are not separate from this intelligence. You are this intelligence expressing itself in human form. When you recognize that intelligence operating in the simple act of breathing, you begin to trust it in other areas of life. You discover that the same presence that breathes, you can guide your decisions, inspire your creativity, and navigate the complexities of daily existence with a wisdom that transcends mental analysis. The dishes become teachers, the walking becomes meditation, the breathing becomes prayer, not because you are imposing spiritual significance on ordinary activities, but because you are removing the mental barriers that obscure their inherent sacred nature. Everything is already holy. You are simply learning to see clearly again. But what happens when difficult emotions arise? When grief moves through you like a storm, when anger burns in your chest, when anxiety creates a flutter of fear in your belly? This is where presence reveals its true power, not as an escape from human experience, but as the space in which all experience can be held with compassion. The mind has been conditioned to resist painful emotions, to push them away, to distract from them, or to create elaborate stories about why they shouldn't be there. But emotions are like weather patterns in the sky of consciousness. They arise, they intensify, they pass away. Resistance to them is like trying to fight a thunderstorm with your bare hands. It only creates more turbulence and exhaustion. Notice what happens when you meet a difficult emotion with complete acceptance rather than resistance. Instead of immediately trying to fix it, change it, or understand why it's there, simply allow it to be present. Create space around it. Breathe with it. This is not about liking the emotion or wanting it to stay, but about recognizing that your essential nature is vast enough to contain any emotional weather without being damaged by it. The emotion may feel overwhelming when you identify with it, and when you believe, I am angry or I am sad. But when you step back into the aware presence that observes the emotion, you discover there is anger here, or sadness is arising. This shift from identification to observation creates the healing space in which emotions can move through you naturally, rather than getting stuck or recycled endlessly through mental resistance. What you call the pain body, that accumulation of old emotional hurts that seems to have a life of its own, feeds on resistance and unconscious identification. It thrives when you fight it or when you completely merge with it. But when met with conscious presence, it begins to dissolve like salt in water, not through force or technique, but through the simple alchemy of awareness. Take a moment to notice any emotional residue that might be present in your body right now. Perhaps there's a subtle tension in your shoulders, a tightness in your throat, a heaviness in your chest. Place your attention there gently, without trying to change anything. Simply acknowledge, yes, this is what's here right now. In this acknowledgement without judgment, healing begins to happen by itself. The breath becomes your most intimate ally in these moments of emotional intensity. When emotions feel overwhelming, the breath remains constant, reliable, always available as an anchor to the present moment. One conscious breath can create enough space to prevent you from being completely swept away by the emotional current. Notice how the breath continues, regardless of what emotions are present. It breathes through joy and sorrow, through fear and love, through confusion and clarity. The breath is like a faithful friend who never abandons you, no matter what weather patterns move through the inner landscape of your experience. Watch how the quality of breathing changes with different emotional states. Anxiety tends to create shallow, rapid breathing. Sadness often brings sighs and irregular rhythms. Anger can make the breath hot and forceful. But you can also influence emotional states through conscious breathing, not by forcing or controlling, but by returning to the natural rhythm that exists beneath all emotional disturbance. Breathe as if you are breathing for the first time. Feel the cool air entering your nostrils, the gentle expansion of your chest and belly, the slight pause at the fullness of the inhalation, the warm release of the exhalation. In this simple act, you are participating in the fundamental rhythm of existence, the cosmic breathing that expands and contracts through all of life. The breath connects you to the present moment more immediately than any mental effort ever could. You cannot breathe in the past or breathe in the future. Every breath happens now, in this eternal present that is the only time in which life actually exists. When attention rests in the breath, you naturally fall out of mental time and into timeless presence. Feel how each exhalation is a small death, a letting go, a release of what was. Each inhalation is a small birth, a receiving, a welcoming of what is. You are constantly dying and being reborn with each breath cycle, participating in the great rhythm of transformation that moves through all of existence. But even as you discover this peace in breathing, notice how the mind wants to turn this into another spiritual technique, another strategy for feeling better, another way to achieve something. This is how the ego operates. It cannot leave anything alone, cannot let anything simply be what it is without trying to use it for its own enhancement. The ego is not your enemy. It is simply a case of mistaken identity, the belief that you are the voice in your head rather than the awareness that hears the voice. The ego is like a small child who has gotten lost in a department store and is frantically searching for its parents, not realizing they are right there watching over the search with loving patience. Observe how the ego creates stories about everything. It tells you who you are, what you should want, what's wrong with you, what's wrong with others, what needs to be fixed or changed or improved. But these are just stories, no more real than the plot of a movie. You are not the character in the story. You are the screen on which all stories appear and disappear. The ego's favorite word is I. I want, I need, I like, I don't like, I should, I shouldn't. But this I is just a mental construct, a collection of thoughts and memories and identifications that changes constantly. The true I is the unchanging awareness in which all these mental constructs arise and dissolve. This awareness needs nothing, lacks nothing, seeks nothing, because it is already complete in itself. Notice the difference between wanting something and simply preferring it. Preference is light, flexible, open to other possibilities. Wanting is heavy, rigid, attached to specific outcomes. The ego turns preferences into wants and wants into needs and needs into sources of suffering when they are not fulfilled. But when you rest in your true nature as awareness, preferences can remain preferences without becoming prisons. Watch how the ego resists this moment through judgment. It says, this moment is too ordinary, too uncomfortable, too boring, not spiritual enough. It always has an opinion about what is happening, and that opinion usually involves some form of resistance to what is. But what if this resistance itself became an object of awareness rather than a position you take? When you notice judgment arising, instead of judging the judgment, simply observe it with the same neutral awareness you might observe clouds in the sky. Judgment arises in awareness, exists in awareness, and dissolves back into awareness. You are not the judge, you are the open space in which all judgment appears and disappears, like weather in the sky of consciousness. But even beyond the thoughts and judgments, beyond the emotions and sensations, there is something that remains constant, unchanged, eternally present. This is the stillness that is always here, beneath all mental noise, beneath all experience. It is not the stillness of death or emptiness, but the vibrant stillness of pure aliveness. This stillness is not something you create through meditation or spirit. You will practice. You cannot produce it through effort or technique. It is what you are, what you have always been, what you will always be. All spiritual practice simply removes the obstacles to recognizing what is already here, always here, waiting patiently for your attention to return home. Notice the space between thoughts. In that space, however brief, there is perfect stillness. It is not blank or void. It is pregnant with unlimited potential. From this stillness, thoughts arise like bubbles from the ocean floor. They sparkle momentarily in the light of awareness and then dissolve back into the stillness from which they came. The mind may protest that there is no space between thoughts, that the mental commentary is continuous and relentless. But this very observation of mental noise reveals the stillness that observes it. You cannot be aware of noise without being the silence in which noise appears. You cannot recognize movement without being the stillness that witnesses movement. Feel the stillness in your body right now, beneath all the subtle sensations, beneath the heartbeat and breathing. There is a profound stillness that permeates every cell. This is not the stillness of a corpse, but the alive stillness of consciousness itself embodied, the presence that animates form while remaining forever formless. This stillness is not dependent on external circumstances. It remains equally present, whether you are in a quiet monastery or a busy marketplace. Traffic noise, construction sounds, the chatter of people, all of these can become like waves on the surface of the ocean, while the depths remain perfectly still. You learn to rest in the depths rather than being tossed about by surface movements. But stillness is not something to grasp or hold onto. The moment you try to capture it, it seems to slip away. This is because the one trying to grasp stillness is the mind, and the mind can only understand movement, change, becoming. Stillness can only be recognized by stillness, known by being it rather than thinking about it. Rest in the recognition that you are already still, already peaceful, already complete. The seeking mind may find this difficult to accept because it has been conditioned to believe that everything worthwhile must be earned through effort and achievement. But your true nature cannot be earned because it cannot be lost. You are seeking what you already are, like sunlight searching for the sun. When you embody this stillness, it transforms every interaction with others. You no longer meet people from the reactive patterns of your past conditioning, but from the fresh space of present moment awareness. This creates a field of presence that others can feel, even if they cannot articulate what they sense. In conversation, instead of preparing your next response while the other person speaks, you listen from the stillness. You hear not just their words, but the being behind the words, the consciousness that is expressing itself through their unique form. This quality of listening is one of the greatest gifts you can offer another human being. Notice how most human interaction happens between two collections of thoughts rather than between two conscious beings. One set of mental patterns speaks to another set of mental patterns, and true communication never occurs. But when you speak from presence to presence, from being to being, something sacred happens. Hearts open, understanding deepens, barriers dissolve. Conflict arises when two egos meet, when two separate identities collide with their different wants, needs, opinions, and positions. But conflict cannot exist between two conscious beings because consciousness recognizes itself in every form. When you truly see another person, you see yourself looking back through different eyes. This does not mean you become passive or agree with everyone. It means you respond to situations from clarity rather than reactivity, from wisdom rather than conditioning. Sometimes that response might be firm and decisive, but it will not carry the emotional charge of ego-driven reaction. Watch what happens when someone criticizes you or disagrees with you. If you are identified with your thoughts and positions, you will feel attacked and will likely respond defensively. But if you rest in the awareness that witnesses thoughts and positions, the criticism passes through you like wind through an open window. There is no solid self there to be threatened. The ego wants to be right, to be special, to be acknowledged and affirmed. But consciousness needs none of these things because it already knows itself to be the source of all experience. When you know yourself as consciousness, the ego's dramas become like plays you might watch with gentle amusement rather than stories you must defend. In intimate relationships, presence transforms everything. Instead of trying to get love, you become love. Instead of seeking completion in another, you recognize your own wholeness and share it freely. The relationship becomes a dance of two complete beings celebrating their unity while honoring their apparent differences. But this surrender to what is, this fundamental acceptance of life as it appears, seems to contradict everything you have been taught about achieving success and creating change in the world. The mind says, if I accept everything as it is, nothing will ever improve. I will become lazy and passive. This is one of the most profound misunderstandings about the nature of surrender. True surrender is not passive resignation, but active alignment with the intelligent energy of life itself. When you stop fighting against the current of what is, tremendous energy becomes available for creative action. Think of a skilled martial artist who uses an opponent's force rather than opposing it directly. The martial artist does not resist the incoming energy, but redirects it, transforms it, works with it rather than against it. This is the essence of surrender, not weakness, but the deepest form of power. Resistance creates friction, tension, exhaustion. Acceptance creates flow, ease, effortless effectiveness. When you are not wasting energy, fight. Against what is, that energy becomes available for creative response to what is. Solutions emerge that the struggling mind could never have conceived. Notice the difference between forcing and allowing. When you force, you create resistance in yourself and others. When you allow, you create space for right action to emerge naturally. The river does not force its way to the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance and arrives with grace and power. This is not about becoming passive or avoiding necessary action. Sometimes right action may appear forceful from the outside, but internally there is no struggle, no resistance, no inner conflict. You become like an instrument through which life plays its perfect music. Surrender means trusting the intelligence that beats your heart and grows the trees and moves the planets in their orbits. This intelligence is not separate from you. It is what you are in your deepest nature. When you align with it, you discover that you are not fighting life, but flowing with it. But even this understanding can become another spiritual concept for the mind to grasp and manipulate. The invitation is not to understand surrender, but to live it, to embody it, to discover it as your natural way of being in each moment. Watch how life lives itself through you when you step out of the way. Thoughts arise and dissolve by themselves. The heart beats without your management. Digestion happens without your supervision. Creativity flows when you create space for it rather than forcing it. Love expresses itself when you remove the barriers to its natural flow. As this recognition deepens, the artificial separation between spiritual practice and daily life dissolves completely. You do not meditate for 20 minutes and then live unconsciously for the rest of the day. Presence becomes your way of being, your natural state, your home base from which all activity arises. Washing dishes becomes as sacred as sitting in meditation. Working at your job becomes as spiritual as attending a retreat. Talking with your children becomes as profound as reading ancient wisdom texts. Not because you are trying to make ordinary activities spiritual, but because you recognize that everything is already infused with the sacred when met with full presence. The spiritual path reveals itself to be not a journey to somewhere else, but a deepening into where you already are. You are not becoming enlightened. You are recognizing the enlightenment that is your true nature. You are not achieving peace. You are discovering the peace that you have never lost. Every moment becomes a teacher when you approach it with openness rather than resistance, with curiosity rather than judgment, with presence rather than mental preoccupation. The person who cuts you off in traffic, the unexpected bill in the mail, the sleepless night, the beautiful sunset. All of these become perfect opportunities to practice being present, to deepen into acceptance, to embody the peace that you are. This is not always easy for the conditioned mind to accept. The ego prefers dramatic peaks and valleys, special experiences and heightened states, but true spiritual maturity is found in the willingness to be ordinary, to find the extraordinary in the simple fact of being alive in this moment exactly as it is. You do not need to wait for perfect circumstances to be present. You do not need to solve all your problems before you can access peace. You do not need to understand everything before you can rest in the mystery of existence. This moment whatever it contains, is your invitation to come home to yourself. Perhaps the most profound recognition is that you are not a person having a spiritual experience, but pure consciousness temporarily appearing as a person. The wave is not separate from the ocean. The cloud is not separate from the sky. The thought is not separate from awareness. You are not separate from the source of all existence. In this recognition, seeking ends not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you realize you were never lost. The journey completes itself in the understanding that there was nowhere to go and nothing to achieve. Home was always here, disguised as this ordinary moment, this simple breath, this awareness that is reading these words right now. Rest here, in the simplicity of being, in the ordinariness of this moment, in the recognition that what you have always been seeking has been quietly, patiently, lovingly present all along, waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else and simply be